investors. And we're just so glad we're able to get Natalia. And Ben's been preparing this conversation for everybody. But just keep in mind, sovereignty events are open floor conversation. So this is not a panel versus you guys. It's a panel with all of us. So in the meantime, if you have any questions, feel free to raise your hand. We can take pauses. And also, I have questions too. So let's the conversation begin.
Yes, let's begin. So before we get into this, I just want to give you guys a quick update on some developments on where our focus is at related to upcoming events and content and community and whatnot. So David and I's goal and focus, what's up, Neve? David and I's goal and focus with this community is to, first bring together the right kinds of people and then encourage collaboration, encourage investment. And that's because we want to create an environment that leads to more venture building and more growth of successful companies. And so our focus with that is really about the relationship aspect of that whole game, right? And so our content series from both the virtual events that we started last week and are going to continue starting in July, as well as these in person, the through line is all about the founder-investor relationship, right? It's about communication, it's about empathy, it's about understanding the other side's perspective so that we can work together more effectively, right? And our belief is that if we can bring people together and we can bring that content and that thought leadership, then naturally more investment, more partnership will happen, and everybody will be more successful together. So that was our focus. And so in this conversation, the topic is the founder-investor relationship. We have our guest speaker, Natalia Sokolova, here. She's been a good friend of mine for the last, I think, 2 years now.
A couple of years, yeah.
Yeah, and for us, it's been a friendship the whole time until recently. We've been trying to pull her in, learn from her professional experience. And as you guys know, right, our whole thesis with community is friends first, business second. And this is a great example of that. So we're excited to get into it. Natalia is the president of a public tech company. She's also the managing director of her family office. And before we kick things off with questions, I'd love for you to just introduce yourself, share with us your background.
Yeah, first of all, thanks so much for having me here. And thanks, everybody, for coming over here. So I have a little, quite diverse background. I was born in Russia. I came here as an exchange student. And upon the graduation, I was supposed to go back and work with my dad's family office. He moved to Switzerland, and that was his whole plan because I was, at the time, the only daughter. But almost dying in the car accident during my college years and, losing, being in the wheelchair and recovering from that, like when you're out as unconscious, you don't see the same vision for your life that parents see for you. So I was like, what, I don't want to go follow the footsteps. I'm here for another reason. And I just started to kind of developing my own life, my own purpose. So to make long story shorter, I became a pretty successful model, but mainly because I wanted to prove myself that I can get on the stage and walk, won a couple contests, and then exposed me to being a judge, being a speaker, being a face of many different companies during my modeling age, but also because I studied finance, international business, graduated top % of my class. Parallel to that, I had licensing. I built my first online marketing agency in my early 20s that had a successful exit in 2006 or 7. And but what's interesting, because now everybody knows everything about it. Back then, people had no idea that I was modeling and doing that. People knew me as a model or knew me as a business model. Nobody knew both sides of the story except for people very close to me. But they gave me a lot of very interesting, skill sets. And then when I bought my first house in Hollywood Hills when I was 24 years old, so I was doing really good in business. And then when my son turned 1 and got a divorce, I moved to New York. And in New York, I wanted to get back more in the finance and public speaking. So I decided that the best way to do would be really just to go into investor relations. So I started off by setting up a really big foundation helping foundation, but a event planning company. So that within a year, I pretty much knew most of the brokers, everybody who is in the public space. And that's how I got my Rolodex. So, but that was really valuable experience when I got into investor relations space, because 10 years working with public companies made me understand that that's the value of exit strategy for public companies. Like when you are, and that's opportunities that I took to investments, to working with startups and founders. And then, I moved back and I focused more on tech. And now I'm president CEO of the public company, primarily because it gives me a chance to develop the product I'm very passionate about. I've been an investor for this company for about 10 years. We're the largest investor in the company. And, and now I'm just here investing, running the company and, helping entrepreneurs.
That's great. And it's a very diverse background.
I know.
I want to backtrack a little bit actually towards the modeling part
Mm-hmm.
because this conversation is all about relationships. I'm
Mm-hmm.
curious, as you're simultaneously running your agency and modeling, how did that experience, as a model and in the environments you were in, the people you were with, how did that affect your long-term approach with network and relationship management?
Well, one thing about modeling, and I think one of the reasons I was successful there, because people are too they try too hard sometimes, and sometimes when you try too hard for wrong reasons, sometimes it kind of backfires. I already had my other business that was successful, and in modeling, I brought my work ethics into the modeling career, and a lot of younger models that don't have those work ethics. And I think that's another reason, just not how you look, but also your communication skills, your, proper appearance, proper time management, being responsible. So people actually trust you because that's what you get hired more and more and more. And that's why I create relationship with photographers, with companies, with brands, and they can bring you back because they know we can rely on you.
And did any of your network or your lessons carry over from modeling into investor relations?
Absolutely. First, it teaches you not to be afraid, because, that was, I'm more introvert than extrovert. So I had to teach myself how to be extrovert, how to, be in front of the audiences, how to be on the stage, how to speak about me, or how to, present a couple of brands, companies. And that carried over into investor relations. And then all that experience is 100% very much helping me where I'm at right now in my life.
And so the company that you're president of, you're also the lead investor. So can you just talk to us a little bit about that progression from model to working in investor relations to now being the investor and having relations with portfolio companies?
Yeah, absolutely. So the question is about the company's relationship with the
about
investor.
your experience in that progression from modeling to LP relations to now being the LP yourself.
Okay. So progression is the relationship that I've had in my life, very long-lasting. Most of my friends, when I moved back to Los Angeles, I kind of became back into my friends. Gary actually knows because, the same circle 20 years ago. And this is the same circle of friends. I'm still friends with them. And I think it's very valuable because when you actually can go back after not even being in touch for a number of years and pretend like you were there yesterday, those are really long-term friendships, and people are really there for each other. So one thing I've learned is that create your circle. It can be outside your personal, your friendship circle, and with that core circle, that's where all other relationship grows because the people care about you, and they will go out of your way to make introductions for you, to care about you. And same thing translates even into the new relationship between founders and investors, because I can tell you what not to do. I have about 30,000 connections on LinkedIn. And rather than just at least reading my profile, because it's very specifically said that I'm interested in technology, I get tons of real estate deals. If you don't even take the 1 minute time to read the profile, I don't care how good the deal next would be, maybe in exactly what I'm interested in. But when you came to me without even investing any time on your research, I will never deal with that person again. So research, because it's not respectful to somebody else's time. If I know you, we can talk about anything. But if somebody approaching me completely on the cold, and I have no idea who the person is, you actually do have to do research. So that's where the relationships come in hand, because you can make introduction. It's trust. It's all about trust in the end.
Right. So how did that relationship start, and how did it develop with the CEO of the company that you're president of?
So we met well over a decade ago. We were brought in by one IR company, and I actually came as an investor, and then we were introduced primarily just to their work, and we kind of clicked because I liked what he was working on, what he was doing, and I think for the first year we were just really we lived in the same physical city, so that helped us to get to know each other much better, and we developed really trust. And there were some situations which was a little bit complex, and the trust was very much required. And because there was one situation with my actions proved that I kind of went way out of my way to do something for him, and that kind of started building the core of the trust. And then up to that, like he had his family office up in Canada. He's from the Campbell family, and with all his skills, because he's an attorney, and my skills, we just decided to create partnership. But it didn't happen overnight. I mean, it didn't happen after a year of getting to be friends. Right now, I consider him my best friends over 10 years, and basically everything we do together. All the deals in the company, in the family office, and even outside, like I consult with him before I do anything.
Could you highlight a specific way that he earned your trust and the way that you earned his trust?
One of the examples, a little bit too personal to share, for all more on his, but it was basically we had to. There was an issue between their company and him, and they were arguing. And basically, I walked in there and I grabbed his personal stuff out of the office, make sure that his computer and everything was protected and didn't go in the bad hands. And I kind of put myself on the line a little bit there, because I knew that was important to him, because there was one bad apple and we couldn't trust him. So we just didn't want to make sure that I wanted to make sure personally that nobody could get access to where all his code and things and that. So I went way out of my way to get all his stuff and bring it back to him personally. And, he's been there for me throughout many years. I mean, he lives in Las Vegas, I live here, but, I know that he's got my back no matter what, and I know I got his. And when you have real trust, I mean, you really can't do anything. It doesn't matter if your project fails or succeeds, because there's a lot more failures than successes. To get to success, you have to fail. But if you learn how to work together throughout that ups and downs, and you realize that, things happen, mistake happens, you can blame, you can point fingers, but relationship is the key. Everything else is rebuildable. Relationship is what matters most.
So you mentioned that he is also from a family office, and oftentimes, right, families like to co-invest and work together and engage with each other. And a lot of that may be because people who are not at that financial level are often wanting things from them, right? So there is that level of trust and kind of seeing each other on a mutual level when you're both in the family office space. But what about for founders who are not in that space and want to figure out ways to build good relationships with families and partner with them?
So, I mean, if you first start with your own network, I mean, let me just go back to the beginning. If you're a founder and you just have an idea, you're really early on, right? So you haven't brought any investors. You have to go to your friends and family. That's why I call friends and family around, because more serious investors that will look who is behind you. Do you have a capability of talking to your inner circle and to get their support? Because, if you just go straight to people you don't know, it tells us, okay, so nobody from your friends helped you out, or friends of the friends helped you out. So creating that initial, trust around your company through your network, through your family, even on a very small scale, it doesn't have to be big. It's more about investors saying, yes, I can see you're doing effort. If they're coming, if they have their own money, if they're not investing their own money, it's a big red flag. If they really don't have their money and they're putting all their hard work and sweat and equity, then they even more have to bring, the network of people, I don't know, small checks, but just show the investor that you're really trying. Track record's also very important, but, to establish that relationship, show what you've done, it's and also when you explain your product, always keep KISS, right? Keep it simple. Investors don't want to hear the technological blabber, or never say that we're going to win the world, we're going to be the next unicorn, we're going to capture all the market. That's huge red flags. So those are what not to do. But, let's say you're already got your friends and family around, and you're ready to start networking with other investors, high net worth families. LinkedIn, obviously they're a very good platform for that, because you can drill down and you research, before sending a message on LinkedIn, do a basic, what I was saying earlier, just basic research. Try to, outside of LinkedIn, Google. There's a lot of sites who give you a little bit more research on the person or on the company. So when you actually try to reach somebody on a higher up level, they know that you did something to to look into their background, and they know it's relevant. But when you already have that network, then you can. Okay, I'm jumping forward. Sorry, let me stay here for a sec. My ADD is kicking in. And so when you are starting to establish that relationship, and the person replies to you, you really need to see, okay, so how can I hook that person up? Because obviously, if it's investor, they'll be getting hundreds of emails, and they don't look at them, they don't read them. It has to be very short, something catchy and short to pay attention to. Then, it's kind of like, what can I do for them? Like, what value can I bring? Why my project is more interesting than the others? For me, when I look at stuff, and I mean, I'm just going to speak on myself. For me, it has to connect like energetically and passionately. I mean, I read through all my emails, but if I feel something that's, even if I'm not going to personally invest, but I feel the passion, I feel that person is really trying to do something good about it, then I'll actually go out of my way and I try to make introduction, even if I don't know who the person is at all. But that's, like rare because it comes from the gut feeling and you can't explain it, right? But on a general, just, try to get friends, exactly what Ben is doing. His organization is amazing, just get to know, like what events they're going to, try to figure out the way to get in the personal space with that person. It's not that hard to do if you think about, see if maybe there's a list of conference this person is attending or speaking. It's all research. And then, just try to get the personal one-on-one, like offer, just to hang out or like bring them book, I see that you like this. I think this is the book you might enjoy. Not expensive, very simple, right? All those little things creates appreciation, creates value in the relationship. Once you establish that value in the relationship, right? Once, you have that circle, then, like, let's say if Ben sends me, like list of whatever, like stuff, they don't need to match my criteria, because then I was like, okay, I know this and that for that, I know that, and that's create a larger network. But the first core, the first heart is what's very important.
So, David.
Yeah, so real quick, I think what you're saying has a lot of like resonating point, because people want to talk to people, assuming what I'm interested in, other people will like it. But when it comes to investors, like, oh, I don't want to say what I'm interested in, because what possible like world they will like what I do. But to your point, right, like share books you're reading, share quirks you want to like. Natalia just shared she likes to go camping. I couldn't see that. I'm like, oh, okay, maybe that's an area. So you encourage people to be authentically raw about what they actually like, because they have nothing to lose, right?
Yeah, and especially just actually nailed it, especially if you find more personal pinpoints that like like you won't see on LinkedIn that I go camping, but you go to my Instagram and you go down, that's a really good way to learn more about somebody's personal life, seeing if they have kids, what ages, what are the points of relationship that you can find of common grounds together. I mean, my car is already packed to go to Sequoia. I'm just going with my 10-year-old, and I have 2 tents in my car right now. So, but if you like look at me or go to my LinkedIn, you'll never know that, right? But that would be a really good opener and a really good point of conversation, right? So stuff like that I think is super important.
And if you ask, let's say people want to ask people, say, let's grab coffee, let's grab lunch. I think in LA, people's general consensus is like, they don't have time for that. But definitely do that, right?
No, I mean, I try to, I mean, if I don't know a person, I mean, I'll always do a phone call first. First email, I mean, like, first of all, because I get so many, I was like, can we get on the call to discuss? It's like, I don't know, first put me in the email what you want to discuss. What is the subject, what you want to do? If that interests me, then we can allocate 15-minute Zoom, no more. And then only that, so it has to be step by step, because if you start saying, oh, can I invite you for dinner? The answer is going to be no. That's simple.
So you mentioned a couple of things. One was that you don't really want to see all the technical details most of the time, maybe later stage, but in the beginning, maybe not. And you talk a lot about trust. You talk a lot about, do you like their impact and their mission? That highlights perfectly why we're so interested in the founder-family office relationship, because it's not just about maximizing scale and exiting in 10 years, but it's more so about mission, impact, alignment, relationship. And so can you maybe share with us your perspectives on the difference between what a family office is looking for, their incentives, their objectives compared to a VC?
Oh yeah, definitely. Well, first of all, family offices are very different, and I think a majority of family offices are really real estate focused, and I think that's why a lot of misconception when they see family office, oh, we're going to shoot all your real estate deals. But that's what creates a family office. It's a very unique approach, and more families, especially like when you have a younger generation, or you have a very established family, maybe in real estate, and I know several of them like that, and the younger generation want to go into tech, going to go into Web3, and it's not easy to even deal within the family, right? So a lot of families do a very small portion of direct private equity. But it's really depends on the family. You really have to understand, and you have to do your homework, somehow figure out what kind of deals, what appetite they have, like are they, do they like risky investments, like do they have even investment banker with a high risk portfolio? I don't know, it's hard to get information, but like even seeing what kind of stocks they're trading can give you really good perspective on their appetite, like is it conservative, is it high risk, if they're just doing plain real estate. So try to get as much information as possible to see even if you are fitting in that criteria. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, and also what are some, to that point, what are some specific questions that we can ask to learn what they're investing in, what they're interested in?
The questions, I mean, actually, so probably okay, so first find out what areas, and that's, if you cannot find anything online, it's sorry, I tried, but let them know that you tried to make an attempt. It's like, I tried, but, I couldn't find anything. Would you mind just giving me a couple of minutes of what you like? What's your, sweet spot? What is your area of interest? Do you focus only on real estate, or do you like technology? I mean, do you focus on US or globally? Just prepare a list of 10 questions, but very generic. And if you see the person start opening up and start being, more open and friendly, then you can kind of deeper. So I would recommend getting 5 very general questions on the areas of industry, then 5, another deeper. And then, if the person really starts opening and giving you his or her time, then you can actually have that lesson. But, kind of peeling layers of the onion. Communication is the key, right? Because the second you feel like you're being too pushy, of course, you're going to be rejected, right? It has to be, I was just actually listening to Tony Robbins and Dean Grazioni event the last 3 days. And Tony said one great thing, we all, we're all smart and we all have a lot of energy, otherwise we'll not be in this room. And we all know how to push through the problem and push to get something done. But sometimes, no matter how strong you are, how much energy you have, pushing every single time exhausts you. So open up and start pulling people in, just start bringing conversation interesting. So when people start responding to you, it's like, actually that's interesting. And pick up on those little voices and tones and subjects, that's, you'll know that's interest, and start going that direction. Be interesting to that person rather than trying to prove that person that you're interesting, right? And that's, I think, where a lot of people make mistakes.
So what's the right way for a founder to progress the conversation to a point where they can share what they're working on without being forceful or pushy and annoying with just how they're pitching?
I mean, honestly, in a setting like this, I know you're a very busy person, and I really don't want to waste your time. This is something that, it just elevated pitch one in half, one sentence. This is the area that I'm working on right now. And would you have a couple of minutes just to give me just listen if you like my idea or suggestion? Ask, before you say, can I please have your permission to share what I'm working on and see if there's interest from you? And that gives you an answer.
Just want to double tap on that.
David just can't keep himself out of the conversation.
Hey, it's engaging. I told everybody, you guys speak up, right?
Yeah, no. You're right, David.
So I'm sure they're waiting for your questions. I think a double tap on that, because we see a lot of people, even when we make introductions, you don't pitch in that introduction. No, please don't do that. Because if you just made an intro, just be patient, get a conversation, you pick up the phone, do not say, thank you for the introduction, this is my project, and then 3 times, do not do that, please. Yeah. So that's super important.
And to your point, I was just, when I go through my LinkedIn, if I see somebody who I know sending me something, I don't even bother looking at it, because, if I have to scroll and they expect me to read 3-page email or 1-page email, I'm not going to do that. But if I see like 2 sentences in the areas, like, oh, I see that you're interested in this area, may I, send you a link? May I, do this? Whenever a person coming to you with 1 sentence and after it's go, may I, you tend, if you're, you tend to respond to that email way better than, okay, do that. It's just psychological, right?
So David and I think a lot about communication to different types of people. Different people have different needs. Family offices have one need and founders have another. And when we're communicating to potential investors or to potential members, even though our ecosystem is a clear strategy, there's a little bit of a variation on how we explain it to each person, right? We're tailoring it based off our awareness of their interests, their needs. And with family offices, unlike VC, it can be extremely diverse in terms of what they care about, what their focus is. So what do you think would be a good strategy for a founder to first understand what that family cares about, what their needs are, and then tailor their, I wouldn't call it a pitch, but explanation of what they're doing in a way that will resonate?
Well, I mean, the main difference between VC and family is VCs is complete number game. They're the crunching numbers. With VCs, you get into the network and you submit your proposal, you submit your spreadsheets, your data, and then somebody in the VC office will go and crunch all the data, and that's how they go through it. Family office, you're dealing with the family. You're dealing with much more human way of approaching situation. So I think it's a very different approach when VC and approaching high net worth or family office. So that's the difference. And what's the other part of the question?
Just basically, how can you make sure that you tailor your explanation to the way that fits with them? So that's the main reason how you tailor everything to the family office. Just going back to the relationship. Going back to which we just discussed. And what really works really well, just go to all the social medias, try to find and see who they know and see if you have one mutual friend in common. And ask, that friend, how do you know? Try to find the common connections and then that actually works really, really well if you can get some pointers from somebody who knows them, because that kind of gets you way in the door faster. Yeah. And one thing I'll add, another one, David.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Something else, Professor. Just kidding. Can you describe culturally, because I know you said you're Russian and come to America, have many different people. There's a big problem with a lot of Asians when it comes to being humble and being actually confident. And then there's also the other end where you come in, my project is the best. Oh, you would be so lucky, and then just go way overboard. We experience that all the time. Sometimes with introduction, the people who are not confident or overly confident, we're like, oh, let's not make that introduction anymore. So can you describe culturally, where do you draw the line? Any ideas for our very diverse background people? Like how do you draw that line?
Well, and just, to address, when somebody is not confident, it's obviously natural. It's normal to be scared. People actually, there's no problem if you're scared and you're afraid and your voice is trembling. It doesn't mean that your project is good. It's good or bad, right? It's not a reflection, and you'll understand. But when you're overconfident in this, a lot of times you're using this overconfidence to find insecurity in yourself, right? So that is just a way to make yourself feel more confident. So for me, if somebody confident, not confident, it doesn't really matter, because it doesn't reflect what they have inside there or what kind of project they have. Culturally, and I was fortunate to travel to more than 50 countries, and I love culture and I love different religion, countries, food, everything. And every time I travel to another culture, I always try to go to, I go to the concierge side. What's really the hole in the wall where all the locals go, right? And put a cap or a T-shirt or something, just whatever, just to blend in and kind of do something grudgy and just go in, just hang out with the local. Because I would love learning culture, because to your point exactly, because Asian culture is very different from Indian, Arabic, Russian, American, Canadian. So when if you don't know the difference between different cultures, it's way harder for you to have a conversation and to appreciate other cultures. So I think for investors that they should be understanding that people coming from different backgrounds might not present themselves as exactly they expect to be presented to, just because, somebody's born here, has been here for many generations, never been to Asia.
Right. So we've been talking a lot about trust building and progress and moving towards the ideal outcome of that investment. But what happens when there's a disagreement, especially with an existing portfolio company? How are you handling that?
So there are always going to be disagreements, right? It's a nature, because when you're an entrepreneur or you're an operator, you come there with your passion, right? When the passion, there comes emotions. With emotion, there comes speaking. And, like me and my partner, a lot of times I won't say argue, but people would think we're arguing because we'll speak on the definitely highlighted notes, and people think we're completely fighting with each other. But that's the way we point our mutual feelings and points across. Because sometimes to get your point across, it's easy to do when you're speaking, loud, especially with somebody you trust. You can get away with that. And then we kind of process it. We never fight with each other, like, I don't talk to you anymore. We process it, and we always come back and to find, okay, this is great points, this is not. We always find common solution. And I think if you have that trust, right, that's a really way, because walking into because when you invest in especially, when your family, when you just write VC, well, depends on VC. If you actually take an active rather than a passive role, because like some of my investment in crypto, I had no idea. My friend just told me, and I was like, and I didn't want to know anything about doing, whatever happens, happens. But there are some companies that you actually want to bring more value, you're more involved in, right? And then, of course, it is going to be confrontational because you're coming from different perspective. And as long as the people understand that you have to not get sensitive when somebody's coming at you, they're just trying to help. So when somebody was like, you're doing something wrong, it's not because they think you're an idiot, but because they're passionate about the mutual goal, and always take a step back. It's like, he's not yelling at me, he's not mad at me, he's just trying to bring value. So let's figure out how to take a step back, because we're all working towards the same goal, and we're all on the same page, we're on the same team. So that's what advice I would give.
We have a question over here.
Actually, more of a comment. I feel like that's why what you're talking about is why relationship and trust is so important, because like you said, anytime you're working with someone, with other people, there's going to be problems, emotions get involved, and if you get loud, if you don't have that relationship, don't have that trust, that relationship can be damaged because of the interaction. But if you have that foundation already, you can have really tough conversations and still be able to continue on.
100%. Yeah. How many people in the room actually have their own businesses? Majority. Yeah. So, how many people in this room never fought with their partners and colleagues?
I've never had partners.
It's a different.
We fight.
And when you have an argument, when you finish that argument, does it damage your relationship if it's a good relationship? So no, that's really what your answer is, right? It's just choose your partners carefully. Going to the business is like going into the marriage, right? It's like really somebody you're doing daily.
Yeah, exactly. I've been learning that with David. Yeah, too many questions. Now, me and David fight all the time, but then we actually, I think we're starting to like it. So. Question for you then, based off that, a lot of people, I think, especially when considering taking on VC funding, they're concerned about control and cap table and decision making and conflict that may come with that investor/partner. But I think that same fear may be the case with family offices, right? We've had experience where there was just disagreement, control issues. So how should a founder be thinking about approaching structuring relationship with family offices?
Again, it's so different. Sometimes, the family office, if you take, family who is a very traditional real estate family, and, like one example is I bring, and one kid and his wife and whatever kids, they decide to go into very risky investment that the patriarchs would never, ever approve, right? And maybe there would be a tension between them that will kind of affect the way that person, kind of has the dealership with the company. Has nothing to do between him and the company, but it's coming from his, patriarch, whatever father, whoever is in the family, who is a grandfather or a thing, and he's maybe forced to back down, so he has to stand his own ground too. So you have to it's rule number one in life, right? Don't take anything personal, right? So whenever happens anything, stay on your grounds. And when any situation arises like this, or misalignments, misunderstanding in the future goals, the only way to do it is just really the old-fashioned way. Just pick a place, not on the phone, not on SMS, no go back and forth, get on the same room, sit on the same table, and just, I don't know, maybe open a bottle of wine at the dinner so you know how it stands, and just kind of discuss it, just go through, okay, just let's, and give each other time to speak, okay, if you're too much aggression, just create a rule, okay, you speak for whatever, 5 minutes, I don't say a word, I promise, and then we take turns. Eventually, the conversations start going and you start creating some kind of mutual conversation because, again, it's all communication.
Yeah, and I like just to kind of draw back to your experience, right? Like the reason we're so attracted to the family office space is because we do view it as more of a partnership, not just capital.
Absolutely.
And like for you getting involved as president of the company that you originally invested in, that's the exact kind of relationship dynamic that we think is attractive and that we're trying to encourage here. So one thing that like David and I think a lot about is not only like with a VC, you know what their goal is, right? It's a return. It's pretty straightforward. But with family office, there may be impact goals, there may be reputation goals. There's different reasons why they'd be getting involved. And so I think for us, our goal is first understand what their objectives are, what their goals are, right? And so for the very last question, we'll open it up to Q&A after this. If you could just give us kind of a kind of short, direct perspective on if you're a founder, let's say you're like seed stage, Series A, maybe relatively early, and you don't want to raise VC, maybe you just don't want it or your model's not a fit for it, and you really are intent on learning how to partner with family offices, not just raise money, but really engage them at a partner level, what would be your approach?
You go back to the drawing board on the research and see, like who are the one way of doing is actually reaching out to multifamily offices, right, who manage a lot of families. Or there is a lot of tons of different service providers to families. They're actually a really good resource, not going directly to the family, but going to them or and saying, it's like, well, I don't want to discuss it, but you're managing, some of the finance, you really know what's going on. Can you guide me? Some people don't shut the door on you, but it's all the numbers games, right? You have to keep trying, keep pushing. It's just if you're going to just give up and say, we're not going to be in the same room because, it takes, 100 no's to get 1 yes sometimes, right? So, but going around, to the people who are providing service to them is a good way to find out which offices are just writing a check, or actually which are more operational, like running the businesses. Or if you're, go to your top competitors and you see who their investors are, sometimes, you can go to Crunchbase or other resources to find out who people behind those companies. You research those investors and see, okay, which one, identify, highlight the ones you like out of them, and you see, are they actually taking active role in that company? So there's so many different ways to get research, and I'm happy to answer any questions and any other guy can, because friends of Ben and that's of my friends. So my number, you can share my number, email, whatever.
That brings up one more question for me, and then we will actually do Q&A. But the question is, if as a, say, early stage founder, right, you want to raise money from family office, do you think it's better, maybe there's not better or worse, but what's your thoughts around going towards the CIO versus the actual family member?
If you can find a personal hook to that family member, it's better to go to the family member. But if you don't, it's very hard to get through the door, so it's better to go to the CIO.
Got it. Great. That's really good. Okay, well, now it's time for Q&A. So first, thank you so much, Natalia.
Thank you.
All right, so who wants to jump in? Who has some ideas? Laurel?
I wanted to go back to where you spoke about the idea of how to connect with an investor. And I go to a lot of these events and I hear that what we shouldn't do to approach an investor or send a 2-line email. I guess my question is, how do we bring the human element out of an investor? I feel like we go to these events, sometimes there is already a wall because there's an expectation that I'm going to be pitched, right? And there's that authenticity that is wanted from us. How do we get that same human element out of an investor? If most of the time investors are looking for deal flow, then to understanding different companies.
When you're an investor, it's a really good question. When you're an investor, it's when you go to events and you're, especially if you're speaking in the panel, you expect so many people to pitch you. Yes, you create a little wall around you that is really hard to break. And usually when somebody comes to you, it's like, oh, I'm working in this and that, I would like to do this. You almost don't hear it, right? So to your point, exactly. But if somebody comes to you and you're, let's say I was on like some family office panel and I spoke about it, and you can quickly look up and you find something personal. It's like, just always make it personal, not through this, like try to always find a personal hook. Just comment, maybe, maybe it's a city, maybe it's a school, maybe it's a mutual friend, maybe it's something, kids the same age, whatever it is, common interest. There's social media gives so many different opportunities. So those are the easiest way to open the door, just something, hey, or it's like, hey, like there was a, great this, or I saw you elsewhere. Or you can even lie, like I think I've, I think I've event, let's say like I was somewhere else, and that I was there, but you were not, right? You can say, oh, I was there too. It's the second time I'm hearing you. So you're creating that history, even though it didn't happen, but I don't know that. So, creating that connection and history, that helps you to open the doors.
Michael?
How's it going?
Hey.
First off, thank you for your time. Second off, so you mentioned in the beginning, you get a lot of messages. Obviously, you're not going to read most of them. For the small minority of ones that you do enjoy, like what captures your attention?
I actually, there was a while that I did not use LinkedIn, so the message piled up. Right now, I'm actually very current on my messages. I scan through them. It takes a few seconds to scan through them. So, and like what I was saying earlier, if they're too long, I still would read first 3 lines of that. If they're just generic, kind of like somebody copying and pasting and this, I usually don't read them. Try to always add personal touch. But I pay attention to if somebody does, I like tech, right? I like different types of tech, especially in the safety security space. It stays in my thing. It stays in my interest. And if the first time, like you like technology, say in safety security, just that first line, I'll read the rest of the email, right? Just point something that says in my profile that what I like, that made me realize that you already at least looked at my profile, and that may be interesting. Maybe it's technology interesting, maybe partnership, because there's a lot of ways to integrate with your network, right?
Thank you.
Questions? Anybody else?
Thank you for the time. Good seeing you all again. Can you describe maybe the family office decision-making process compared to VC? I know VC can be more of a partner meeting, and some partners have to lead a deal each fund. How do you kind of think about the actual decision-making?
It is so varies from family to family. Like in our case, it's the main decision maker is Gary, my partner Gary Campbell, and myself. And then it goes through analytical team and advisory. But the first pretty much the yes or no goes just between 2 of us. Then you have a much more structured family that they don't run the operation, that everything goes through multi-family office who manages all the operation, and then to get through that steps, to get through the decision-making process is way longer. So that's something you have to really, again, do your research and ask, for the person who's in charge, like, what is your process? And that's a very, very good question, because it's a very important question to ask, because sometimes if you're a founder and you need to raise the money within the next 3 months and the decision process takes 6 months, obviously you cannot work with them, right? So you need to go with somebody else. It's a very good question. Thank you.
I have a question based on that too. What would it look like internally from the family's perspective for an individual family member to champion like an early stage venture deal if it normally wouldn't fit within their thesis?
It all depends on the relationship with the family, right? I don't know if one of my friends, you might know him. I don't want to say the name, but that's exactly what he did. And it took a while to family to accept it, but eventually they were okay with it. I think it's more that goes into a whole different subject about interfamily relationship and how you convince your family that that's what you want to do.
Yeah. Okay. Makes sense. Other people, questions? We'll get Ed first, and then.
Sure. Thank you. When we get invested by a VC, we get more than money, right? And some of them can be really, really good experts in our area. Mm-hmm. Can we get the same level of expertise and value outside of money from a family office? Like, is that the average? Is that the same?
It's really depends, because You see, VC, they have their own formula, right? So VCs is a number game. So they say they'll do 100, and if 10 of them will succeed, they got their return. So there's not much personal touch with the VC. It's really creating the formula that works and applying that formula to just copy and repeat, right? When you come to the family, it's a lot more personable. And it's really just, some family just wants to write a check and has nothing to do with it, but some family, put their heart and soul in the project. It's really depends.
If I can ask a follow-up question, more than the heart and soul, the knowledge. Do you feel that they have we can have the same knowledge?
Again, if families, a lot of families are highly focused on the real estate, and obviously they're extreme experts in every single thing to do with real estate, taxations, loans, all of that, trust, and in the technology, probably VCs, I would say, because VCs has been around in the technology space for long. I would say VCs probably has much more expertise when it comes to technological development and bringing the financial structure and everything to the team. I think if you're looking for that support, probably VC would be a better way to go.
Cool. All right, we'll do 2 more questions. I think we had a couple back here in the back.
Hi there. Thank you for your time and expertise. I was curious whether you personally prefer to invest at what round? Pre-seed, seed, Series A? Where do you want a company to be before you even consider it?
So on Web3, I just actually for 1 year decided just to try it, and I have my friends who are way more knowledgeable in Web3 areas, so I kind of follow advice, and I would just took 10 companies, and I put checks between 50 to 100, just something without really doing much homework, without really doing that, just kind of trusting, kind of just playing with it, right? So that's not what normally I do. So that was as early as I ever got in. But normally we still get on the early stage. We still get Series A's or earlier, kind of in between that seed and Series A, because having the minimum viable product is important because you need to show some traction. Revenue, not necessarily, because in technology sometimes it takes time to get to revenue, but you have a minimum viable product, you have a good strategy. Yes, then we're looking at it, especially so we operate a little bit different because we utilize the public company that we have full control to incubate technologies. So we go and do SPVs. We can maybe merge some of our technologies, bring other technologies and create SPVs. Create a knowledge base into that SPV, roll it up, and put it in the public market, right? So file S1 and go. So having a partner who is compliance attorney and on the Vancouver, and that really helps. And I love that path because it's you can get a very, very early stage technology, roll it up with the existing, sometimes already the ones that have a client, put it all together, and then you have a company that's very soon ready to be listed.
Awesome. Yeah, so last question is...
Just want to, Natalia, we did one thing before with our member. It's really fun. So we always ask the panelists questions, right? So today we're going to end a little bit differently. If you want to have an ask, what would the ask be? And then ask to our audience, see if we can provide any value. I think usually when people ask, it's always surprising.
Yeah. I'm actually kind of just... curious, when you, how many people here are actively raising money right now? And so from your experience, how many of you actually already spoken to family offices? A lot less. What's the one who did not raise their hand? What is the number one reason you didn't try to approach it? Is one is I don't know how to approach. 2, I don't know anybody in this space. 3 is I prefer going the other route. So who is 1?
So I'm in the clean electricity space, renewable energy space. So if I was going to go after family office relationships, I'm not really clear on how to find the family offices that have an interest in that space. Where would be the resource to find that?
The good resource is, family office associations. I don't want to say this because there's actually family office association. There is family office club. There's a lot of family office events. Companies who actually do specific events, and I think that will be really the best source to go. There's Opal is one of them. FOA, FOC. There's just so many. I probably can name at least like 10 from the top of my head, but I'm happy to create that list. Those are the people find out because they're very easily accessible because their job is to really curate events. And if you go to that and you ask them a question, I was like, okay, I'm really into that space. Would you recommend just anybody I can talk to? You can always try, right? You can always get no. One thing about being an entrepreneur, yeah. As long as you're comfortable with no, that's first way to be successful, right? People who are not, they'll never be successful.
I think you said one thing that stuck out to me was they're easily accessible, and I think it's the total opposite. Yeah. I think that there's a huge barrier to entry to family office, which is why a lot of people didn't raise their hand, because there's this idea that we should go through association, and those people are the gatekeepers. They're not accessible. That's the biggest wall, right? And then family offices, you can't get to them without them, right? And I think
a lot of
that's
times,
the biggest issue. To bring it full circle, I think that setting up a certain way that these organizations should interact, and as a family office, knowing that the way that they are interacting with the companies would probably be a better way to approach it, and then more of us will have access to understanding exactly what you're looking at when we meet you at an event, right? Because now it's like, oh, what does this family office want? We don't know because we can't get to them through other people. So.
Yeah, no, that's true. I mean, those people are definitely gatekeepers, but also those people will save you a lot of times because they're gatekeepers, because if they see that your project is really of interest to family office, they will make this introduction because they are bringing the family. And you save chunk of time of trying to get to the point when you're actually just not going to, your project is never going to be of interest to that. Then you just have to find other type of investors. So there's, two parts of the story.
Right. And that's exactly why we're working on getting partnerships with those exact kind of groups. But leading into that, also why we're creating this kind of content to teach the proper communication, the right approach. So I think that's good for now. That's all we have. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Natalia.
Thank you, Natalia.
Thank you.